Oh, it's recording now. All right, good. I switched from my iPhone to my digital camera because now my iPhone is low on power, but I've recharged the battery on the digital camera. So here we are with a different camera. Ho ho! Life is full of excitement, isn't it? Oh, no, it's not. Oh. All right. Let me catch you up on what's going on. That was the end of the first episode of The Bad Beginning, and it was, in fact, what was I going to say? I believe it gets us, we can watch the credits, which is just a moment, but I'm more or less certain, I have to double check, that the 2 installments of the book, which I posted on my homepage, is about the same place in the story as what we have done already in the video, so there's that. Let's just watch the credits because I want to give respect to the people who made this. The sound you hear in the music is the sound of a typewriter. Oops. Oh, it's still going. Okay. Provided by Paramount. Nice. I'm just curious what's after that, if anything. Because we're not at the end of the file yet. But apparently we're at the end of the content. All right, good. So, originally my plan was to fill the 3 hours with this, but I finished a little early. So let me point out some things about this first installment here, and double check about when this starts. We may actually end up starting the next the next episode. We'll see how it goes. One of the big things that was changed among quite a few is the importance of Mrs. Poe, the newspaper. I don't know what her position is, the general editor maybe of the newspaper, making up these headlines. Mrs. Poe was originally not that person. Mrs. Poe had a very small character in the story. However, there was later on another character who was a reporter, and she was the one who said, imagine what my readers will say when they read this. And it's some quote from the Baudelaires or whatever. Here's the appearance of this lady, Justice Strauss, who's a wonderful character, played here by Joan Cusack. Her brother, John Cusack, has essentially the same name and is also an actor. this word must be wrong. I'm not sure what the word should be. I have to look it up in my copy of the paper book. Where's the there we are. Mrs. Poe has, in fact, that whole dinner scene and spending time at the Poe's house takes a very short amount of time in the story. Edgar and Albert, here we go. Here's what it says about their time in the Poe house. Their home destroyed, the Baudelaires had to recuperate from their terrible loss in the Poe household, which was not at all agreeable. Mr. Poe was scarcely at home because he was very busy attending to the Baudelaire affairs. And when he was home, he was often coughing so much he could barely have a conversation. Mrs. Poe purchased clothing for the orphans that was in grotesque colors and itched. Grotesque is a word that here means, to borrow a phrase from Lemony Snicket, grotesque means bizarre and kind of scarily weird. And the clothing itched. Actually, the clothing was not itchy, it made the children itchy. The children were named Edgar and Albert, were loud and obnoxious boys with whom the Baudelaires had to share a tiny room that smelled of some sort of ghastly flower. So that part is accurate in the screenplay. Even given the surroundings, the children had mixed feelings when over a dull dinner of boiled chicken, boiled potatoes, and blanched, the word blanched here means boiled, string beans. Mr. Poe announced that they were to leave his household the next morning. Good, said Albert, who had had a piece of potato stuck between his teeth. Now we can get our room back. I'm tired of sharing it. Violet and Klaus are always moping about and are never any fun. And the baby bites, Edgar said, tossing a chicken bone to the floor. Ugh. And that's the whole period with the Poes. It sounds like they stayed maybe one night with the Poes before leaving for Count Olaf's. Wow. This part here is important to mention. The Poes, the Baudelaire's will. The will is the document which says, okay, if we die, here is how we're going to distribute the things we have. For example, this grandfather clock may go to our cousin, and this beautiful necklace will go to my aunt, and so on. So here Mr. Poe is talking about your parents' will. Your parents' will, Mr. Poe said, instructs that you be raised in the most convenient way possible. That doesn't sound like what a couple of loving parents would say. They just use the most convenient way possible. That's strange. Here in the city, you'll be used to your surroundings, and this Count Olaf is the only relative who lives within the urban limits. Klaus thought this over for a moment as he swallowed the bean. But our parents never mentioned Count Olaf to us. Just how is he related to us exactly? And Poe, as in the script, he is either a third cousin 4 times removed, or a fourth cousin 3 times removed. And then the script adds in one phrase saying, at any case, he's removed. Which is a good piece of writing. Also by the author of the book. He's not your closest relative on the family tree, but he is closest geographically. So in real space. He's closest to them in the city. Okay. Right. Yep. One of the phrases that comes out elsewhere in the story, but I can't take the time to find it right now, is that the orphans will, no, the parents, Baudelaire parents' will, says that they are to be raised by their nearest living relative. No, their closest living relative. Now, when we're talking about the closeness of a relative, we mean according to the family. If your parents had a brother or sister, the kid's uncle or aunt would take care of the kids because they're closely related. If the Baudelaires had an older sister who was an adult, the sister might take care of them. Something like that. The closest living relative does not mean closest on the map at all. And the beginning of the second episode explains how come Count Olaf was actually selected to be the closest living relative in the map sense. Oh yes, here I mentioned that they had horse-drawn carriages. Here is the exact place where it happens. Mr. Poe, however, also has an automobile. And the city has cobblestone streets. Oh, I'll show you a picture of cobblestone streets to link to. Cobblestone Street actually is we used to have Longtown Road done up much like this, with individual stones instead of actual pavement like we usually use. Things like that. The problem that we had on campus with the cobblestone street was it was very bumpy, especially for motorcycles. It was dangerous because, you would be bumping up and down. Bicycles were even harder to use. Okay, so I'm just going to link this. Get a nice variety of cobblestones. Yay! And a horse-drawn carriage, I might as well show you a horse-drawn carriage, even though it's kind of obvious. Yeah, I mean, you can take your pick of any of these. A horse-drawn carriages. Well, the word draw in, I think, all of its main meanings in English, they all have the same basic meaning, although people forget. The word draw means to pull. Like a toti is a drawer, because you pull it open. When you draw a picture, you're pulling the crayon or the pencil across the page. A drawstring back is one that's pulled together to make it close. I'm thinking of any other meanings, but anyway. People may not think, draw a picture has anything to do with pulling, but that is the origin of the word. Horse-drawn carriages. But look at the very next phrase right after horse-drawn carriages. It says, they passed horse-drawn carriages and motorcycles along Doldrum Drive. They passed the Fickle Fountain right after Doldrum Drive. There is also surprisingly, a reference to the royal gardens, which sound like it's related to a king or queen, or a princess or a prince, or someone like that. But I thought this took place in America. Again, making it very hard to be clear about what time period this story takes place, and the location too. But I would say the royal gardens, because they do not have the double, alliteration connected with most of these place names like Fickle Fountain. Royal Gardens does not do that. So I would take that one as a little less official, personally. This scene that we saw in the video is almost precisely the same as in the book. They made this opening, usually Lemony Snicket introduces some conceptual idea, a philosophical idea or whatever, to start off the chapter instead of getting right into the action. And he says in chapter 3, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but first impressions are often entirely wrong. You could look at a painting for the first time, for example, and not like it at all. But after looking at it a little longer, you may find it very pleasing. Klaus, when Sunny was born, did not like her at all. But by the time she was 6 weeks old, the two of them were as thick as thieves. This is not only is this alliteration, but it is a regular American idiom. Oh, there it is. Meaning that they were very close and they worked together a lot. Your initial opinion on just about anything may change over time. Then he goes on, I wish I could tell you that the Baudelaire's first impressions of Count Olaf and his house were incorrect, as first impressions so often are. But these impressions, that Count Olaf was a horrible person and his house a depressing pigsty. A pigsty is the place where pigs live, and of course it is very dirty. These first impressions were absolutely correct. Okay, so this bit of introduction was used for the book. In the dialogue that also Daniel Handler wrote, he doesn't speak this out as Lemony Snicket. Instead, he makes it into a bit of dialogue. And I can't remember exactly how it was worded, but I think what happened is basically Count Olaf asked what the orphans thought of him, something like that. And Violet said, well, I need to remember. Actually, Klaus tries to say, oh, I think you're a horrible person. But Violet shut him up and said that the first impressions that people have are very often completely wrong. And Count Olaf says, well, you may think at first that I am a horrible person and this house is disgusting or whatever. But I think in a little time you will discover that you have not got the faintest idea. Which means you think it's bad, but you don't know how bad it is. It's much worse than you think. So actually that supports the idea that the first impressions were wrong because they underestimate how terrible Count Olaf really is. Where is it? Oh, instead of toys, books, or other things to amuse the youngsters, Count Olaf had provided a small pile of rocks. And we got that into the dialogue here. Very nice. sometimes in the dialogue of the video, they come very, very close to saying something that is shocking and would not be suitable for children to read. And in the book too. For example, I'm tongue-tied, I'm sorry. They're talking about the special dish of pasta, or idalimen, it's pasta. Spaghetti is not the only kind of idalimen, by the way. Many people think it is, but it's totally wrong. It's just one of hundreds of different kinds of pasta. Anyway, they have a special dish of pasta called, damn it, I can't say it, pasta puttanesca, which means noodles for prostitutes. And they almost said it. One of them said, what does puttanesca mean? But they don't ever actually respond to the question, because that would have been too shocking for this show. Although there's nothing wrong with people like, in sex work, it's okay. The instructions to make dinner for Count Olaf's entire troop was in the original book. On the list already, in the video, we saw him take the list, turn it around, bring out a pen, and write down that instruction personally. But it was already, in the book, it was already written on the back of the page where the children didn't notice it. However, it's true in both versions that Count Olaf never did ask for roast beef. He only mentioned it after the pasta puttanesca had been finished. In the same way. Oh, now this is something I had totally forgotten. There was a knock on the door after they had been cleaning and looking for food to make a meal. And the knock on the door is actually Justice Strauss. Justice Strauss mentions the court case that's about to happen in the High Court, and she says, I really can't discuss it because it's official business, but I can tell you it concerns a poisonous plant and illegal use of someone's credit card, which is exactly what she says to Count Olaf in the video. Somehow this one always escaped me. So she hears about the case, the court case. It says, "Yika!" Sonny shrieked, which appeared to me, how interesting. Although, of course, there was no way that Sonny could understand what was being said. Totally the reverse of what normally happens, where she says something and people have no idea what she said. And see how sweetly this comes in. Justice Strauss looked down at Sonny and laughed. "Yika, indeed," she said, and reached down to pat the child on the head. Sonny took Justice Strauss's hand and bit it gently. "That means she likes you," Violet explains. "She bites very, very hard if she doesn't like you, or if you want to give her a bath." Okay. There are many things that they need, but finally Klaus speaks out, asking to borrow a cookbook in the library. So you see, the things were slightly changed. The visit by Justice Strauss offering the leg of lamb, which Count Olaf ate, and really hurt her. Actually, Count Olaf really hurt her feelings by saying that the children had eaten the leg of lamb, although it was an obvious lie, and that it was too salty. And they added that to the script, and it was well done. So they go to the library, and everything's really good. Justice Strauss says that the cookbooks are over here on the eastern wall. In the script, they say the cookbooks are in section G, which possibly may stand for gourmet, the high-class eating. Oh, not lave. Not leave either, it's love. Silly. Optical carriage recognition. Actually, Sonny manages to say the word book here, which is really good. Okay. And then they move on, they make the food. This line here in the book is used exactly the same. That's very nice. Count Olaf asks, my troop is right behind me and they're very hungry. The song was totally made for the video, not from the book. And he says, where is the roast beef? Violet said, we didn't make roast beef. We made puttanesca sauce. In the earlier movie by Barry Sonnenfeld, Jim Carrey hears the phrase puttanesca sauce, and he says, "What did you call me?" Again, getting very close to saying something which children probably don't need to hear. He picks up the baby. And then all of the acting troupe members appear, not eating yet. Let me describe these characters here. Soon they were crowding the room, an assortment of strange-looking characters of all shapes and sizes. There was a bald man with a very long nose. In this version we have a big, muscular, bald man, but his nose is not very long. There were two women who had bright white powder all over their faces, making them look like ghosts. We do have these two women, and they're played by twins in the video. That's interesting. Behind the women was a man with very long and skinny arms, at the end of which were two hooks instead of hands. They usually refer to him, until we know his actual name, as the hook-handed man. There was a person who was extremely fat. I don't think there's anyone like that in either video. And, oh, no, I was wrong. I only read half the sentence. There was a person who was extremely fat and who looked like neither a man nor a woman. I like that. That's pretty cool. Goals, Okay. Behind this person standing in the doorway were an assortment of people the children could not see, but who promised to be just as frightening.